Morgan, what are we talking about?
Today, we're going to be talking about how to price yourself as a freelancer, no matter what industry you are in. We're going to share 2 equations and 3 different pricing methods. Okay, guys, welcome in. I am Morgan Overholt. I'm a 6-figure freelancer and blogger, and this is Elena O'Neill.
I'm also a blogger and freelancer and basically Morgan's right-hand woman.
In this video, we're actually going to show you 2 equations. We're going to use a baseline equation and then a goal rate, essentially, or a goal equation that you can use to price yourself no matter what industry that you are in. We're also going to share with you 3 different pricing techniques that you can apply to your own business. All right, first, I'm going to ask Elena, when you started freelancing, Elena, do you have any idea how to price yourself?
I started as more of a side hustle. So like any money felt like extra money to me at the time. And I wasn't really thinking about it as a career per se. You said, hey, I got work for you and I'll pay you this much. And I said, okay.
You just relied on somebody else telling you what you were worth, essentially.
which I would not recommend.
Yeah, exactly. I would also not recommend that. Usually, now it's fine because if in Elena's case, she was working for me, which I was actually more like an agency. And so you might run into that sometimes. But what Elena should have still done was use these rates that I'm about to share with you right now to see whether or not that price tag actually worked for her and her business. All right, let's dive in. So the very first thing that you want to do as when you are a freelancer is you want to determine a baseline rate. All right. And here's your equation. We're going to put it up on the screen using the magic of editing. What you're going to do to determine a baseline rate is you're going to think about the baseline annual salary that you need to make to meet your cost of living, essentially. All right. Now, obviously, it's going to require a little bit of homework on the front end. Then we're going to divide that by annual desired hours. And I say desired hours because everybody's always like, oh, I'll work 40 hours a week, 52 weeks per year. And very few of us are actually going to do that. We want to take vacations. Stuff happens, emergencies happen. I mean, in a normal day, Elena, how many billable hours do you probably get in, even if you aim for 8?
On a great day when I was, minus the blog work, probably 7.5 max.
Let's just plug in for funsies that I would like to make at least $75,000 a year. I use that number because that was the last salary number that I made in my last salary job. And I divide that by, let's say, 2,080. That made my baseline rate just to like survive and have like a normal amount of time off, $36 per hour. Okay. Now, obviously, that may or may not make sense for your industry. This is just an equation that determines whether or not freelancing is worth it. Okay. The second thing we're going to do is determine a goal rate. We're going to fill in a few more variables with this. Okay. This equation is a little more complex, but anti-math people, don't freak out. I'm also an anti-math person. All right. I'm not good at it. It's super simple. I promise. Next, we're going to determine our desired net income. All right. And that's more of like what we would like to make. Then you're going to add that to your annual expenses. That's more like business expenses. Okay. Because we've already determined our life expenses in the other base salary. So you already have that taken care of, plus your annual taxes. Now that will take a little bit of an estimation, but fairly safely, you could probably say your taxes are going to be between 25 to like 28%. Then we add all those together. Then you're going to divide your annual hours that you would like to work. And then that's going to equal your hourly goal rate. Okay. So just for funsies, just plug in some like random numbers here. Let's say that your annual salary goal is $100,000. Then let's say that your annual business expenses are around $20,000. Then let's estimate out of that your annual taxes are going to be about $28,000. Divide that by, I reduced the amount of hours I wanted to work here down to 1,398, 1,398. I was feeling lazy when I was making these goals. And that equaled more of $106 per hour that I would have to sort of strive for if I wanted to net $100,000 a year. Isn't that interesting? So as a freelancer and a business owner, you really want to make sure that you know all those numbers. And then if you really want to make $100,000 a year, that you are talking about a net income and not just an overall revenue.
If you're a regular employer or employee, you're not going to be accounting for your taxes when you ask how much, you make. When you said you make 75,000 a year, you weren't subtracting your tax amount. Your tax rate might be a little higher if you're self-employed, and that's kind of a whole different equation.
Yep, exactly. A freelancer who says they make $100,000 a year might actually be netting a completely different amount of money every year than like a salaried employee that says they make $100,000 a year when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it. Now, here's a quick hack. All right. if you don't really know what your goals are, you can also reverse engineer this a little bit. All right. So if we go back to our original baseline rate, again, my salary divided by my annual desired hours equals my hourly rate. There's this cool profit margin calculator that's actually provided by Shopify. And it's so super easy because all you have to do is you type in, it says the cost of the item. But for me, let's just type in like our hourly rate. Then let's say I want to like at least make 30% on that, right? For every hour that I work. Your sale price should be $46 an hour if you want to make 30% on every single hour that you work. I personally think a healthy margin is at least 50% or higher. With that said, I want to wrap up with the 3 different strategies that most freelancers use to price themselves. All right, I'm going to start with the least popular pricing strategy, hourly. Hourly is the one that everybody sort of like poo-poos on. Over time, you hurt yourself on the hourly rate, especially if you're not constantly incrementing the hourly rate. I say this because let's say that Elena right now, let's say I employ her to make a logo. Let's say that she isn't very good at making logos. That's a lie. But anyway, let's say she isn't very good at making logos. So like the first time she ever does a logo, it might take her like, I don't know, 20 hours or something to make that logo. Okay. Because she's really struggle bussing with it. Right. Well, let's say that 5 years from now, I go back to Elena. I say, okay, I'm going to pay you to make a logo. Elena's actually gained some skills. She's got some street cred. She took a couple classes. She got a lot faster. This time it took her 5 hours to make that logo instead of 20. Does that mean the logo that she made when she was less experienced, when it took her more time, is more valuable because I had to pay her more per hour or more for more hours when she had less experience? Now, obviously, you can offset that as an hourly freelancer. And this is what I do because I work hourly all the time by just incrementally increasing those rates to where they make sense, to where you're not penalizing yourself. Elena, thoughts on hourly pricing?
I feel like hourly in our experience has been a little bit better because I find that fixed rate, jobs, I guess you really just have to be careful and specify. You get so many edits and that kind of thing.
So the second structure is fixed rate pricing, which Elena already kind of alluded to. And also, like Elena just said, I kind of feel like fixed rate pricing is for somebody with a little bit more experience because maybe you really don't know how long it's going to take you to do a specific project. You really don't know your numbers. I really think there's nothing wrong, even if you plan on ditching it later, starting out with some hourly. But if you do have some experience under your belt and you know about how long it's going to take you, because again, you've always got to keep those hourly goals in mind. I look at past jobs and I essentially take sort of the high average of about how long it took me to do that type of project. I again then apply the margin to make sure that I'm making enough on the hours that I think this will take me. And like Elena said earlier, this also will require you setting the guardrails in for your client by saying, hey, look, and this price includes like 1 or 2 rounds of edits, or includes this or this or this. It doesn't include this or this or this. And then the third method, and this is like the super trendy method for pricing yourself as a freelancer, is something called value-based pricing. Now, I'll admit, I think this is the absolute hardest one. Chris Doe from the future, who I absolutely love and has so much like valuable information, I have mad respect for. He is all about the value-based pricing. And the idea behind value-based pricing is that you are asking your client essentially how much that project is worth to them. Let's say that you had like a retail store and they were selling handbags, right? They wanted you to make a Facebook ad for their handbags. What you would theoretically do is you would say, okay, well, about how much do you expect to make on that ad from the handbags that you sell, from the ad that I make? And then you essentially entitle yourself to a portion of those profits. Now, I that's kind of like a little bit of a baller move. I ain't gonna lie, like mad respect. I bet that works all over the place. Personally, with my clients, I would have a really hard time doing that, especially since Elena and I focus a lot with like government-based subcontractors. I think this also kind of depends on the sort of clientele that you're working for when you're going for value-based price. And I will say that I think your prices should vary if you were working on a mom and pop shop versus years from now when you're working like with a gigantic client like Nike or something like that. And I also think it's a really good tactic to use in case you have any pushback from your clients about helping them understand the value of your services based on what value they are receiving or their company is receiving from your service. So I hope that information was fairly valuable to you today. How do you price yourself as a freelancer? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be really eager to hear from you. Also, don't forget to connect with me on social media. It's at Morgan O Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe. Elena, thoughts on hourly? It's nothing to sneeze at. I agree.